Hey, Julian Stahl here. First tech we're going to do on this whole filming thing we're doing. Today we're going to cover how to put the ductile iron 3-inch stroker crank in your Kohler Command V twin engines. Right here I got a complete motor here. I'm going to show you from start to finish, basically, how to do this. First step to do, get up on your workbench. You want to drain the oil out. So we're going to go down here, just going to take this drain tube out, and we're going to take this plug out here, we're going to drain the oil out. And then once the oil drains, we're going to start taking it apart. Okay, we got the oil drain in this engine. Next step is we're going to remove these, the lines. We're going to take the shroud off. To do the lines first, we're going to take these clamps loose, take the breather hose off, the fuel line off, and take it off. If you have a vacuum fuel pump, it'd be down here in the hose. Some has a vacuum, some has a mechanical fuel pump in the valve covers. You just got to remove the hoses. So you just take the clamp loose, like a needle nose, pull the clamp down, then you just kind of whip the hose around and pull the hose off. And do it here, take it off here, and take it off down there, and we'll take this clamp off. Okay, we got the hoses removed. These hoses are kind of, this particular engine, the hoses are pretty brittle, so you might want to put new hoses on when you go back together, just to let you know. Next step, we're going to take the shroud off. And to take the shroud off, we need to take the screen off right here, take these 4 bolts off, get the screen off because it won't come off past it otherwise. Take the screen out, then we'll take these bolts off right here. There's 2 bolts here, one there, and on the other side, these 2 bolts. Bolt here, and we'll take the starter off too. Okay, we're going to take this screen off. This takes a 10mm socket on this one. We're just going to buzz these 4 bolts out. You got to be careful that there's spaces behind this screen that sometimes want to fall off too. Depends on this. They make different versions of them. And this is holds the fan and stuff on, so we got that off. We'll set that off to the side. And this has auxiliary PTO. We're going to take that off too because you got to put that on when we take the flywheel and stuff off. Move it up here. We're going to take these 4 bolts out here. Okay, the auxiliary PTO is loose. We need to take this off. We're just going to take a hammer and give it a little wrap. Comes right off. Set that off the side. Now we'll do the shroud. So we'll do the shroud next. We're going to take these bolts out here. Can't quite get on it. Okay, so I got all the bolts out. Next step, we'll remove this. Okay, all the bolts are on the shroud. We're going to take the shroud, all the bolts out. What you're going to need to do is you need to unplug this wire here. This is the voltage regulator for your charging system. You unplug that so you can pull this off. Then if you get that off, you just pull this right off. All lines are off. Your fan shroud's out. And then next step is here's your cooling fan. Take that off too. And next step we're going to do is you get that off, you pull the plug wires off. So you need to pull the heads off. Come up here pretty shortly. Okay, next step we're going to take this throttle linkage off here. What we need to do is just take the spring off the governor here. Take a needle nose, just pull it off there like that. And then you'll have there's a little spring here on the throttle you need to take off. And here, we'll just move the camera here a second and we'll get a little better shot of this here because it's kind of hard to see. You take the little spring off here, just take a little needle nose, pull that spring off of that one there, and then you gotta take the little plastic clip here and just flip it over, down clip it. Grab the screwdriver. We're gonna get this thing unclipped here one way or the other. Kind of tough. You don't want to break it either. It's just a plastic clip that snaps over top the shaft. There, that's snapped over the. Now that's ready to come off. Don't lose a little plastic clip. Pulls that throttle on. They'll have to go back together when you get done. Then you just take these 4 bolts out, 10 millimeter socket, and this linkage will come right off. You'll have to unhook the choke linkage when you do that. You just got to take and turn it and pull it out past the little dog leg. Then you set that off to the side. Now, next step we're going to do is take the carburetor off. The carburetor is pretty much ready to come off. You'll have a wiring you got to take loose because it comes with the intake. The wire for the oil sender, little green wire here, and then we just take the 8 millimeter socket. You pull this right off here. 4 bolts hold the intake on. Those 4 bolts out, just gotta pull this intake loose. Then we pull it right up out of here. It's gonna have the wires gonna be still attached to these coils. You need to pull the wires out the coils. They only go on one spot. They're the white wire on this particular one. And there's a wire still hooked up that goes down to the charge system. So you just kind of leave it sit off to the side of the motor till you get a little further down the road here. Next step is we're going to pull the valve covers off next. And in fact, before we do that, we'll pull the starter off quick because it makes it less weight to move around. So just take 2 bolts, 10 millimeter. That takes the starter off. You want to grab it with your hands, don't drop it on the floor. And you set this off to the side with it. Okay, got that off. We'll pull the valve covers off quick. You gotta get them off sooner or later. Most of our and pull the valve cover off. Don't lose a little spacer on it. And then here's the O-ring. They can reuse that. Just stick it back in the valve cover when you go back together. The rockers. Just gotta take the rockers loose. 8 millimeter socket. Just take the 2 rockers loose. I always usually set them in the valve cover. Pull the 2 push rods out, and just do that, and do the same thing for the other side. And we'll go on to the take the cylinder heads off next, and the flywheel off next. Next step, we want to take the coils off because you can't get the flywheel off without getting the coils off, and you have to readjust these when you go back together. It's you put a feeler gauge between here and there in the coil, and it's like a 13 thousandths feeler gauge. You know, 10 thousandths works too, but 13's fine. It just takes these are either a 4 millimeter Allen wrench like this, or some have an 8 millimeter bolt. So they vary like that. It's just the 2 bolts hold them on. Nothing technical at all. Take the bolts out. If you drop it, it sticks to the magnet even. But just take the bolts out, take the coils off, set them to the side, and just kind of remember the way you take them off. The electrical things, they'll bolt on either way, but the electrical connections go out. So I do that. We'll take the other one off here quick. Next step, we're going to take the flywheel off, and that takes a 13 millimeter socket. Just to run it off an impact again. Buzz that bolt out, and the easiest way we find to get these off, it don't work every time, but a lot of times it works. We use like a pry bar like this. We stick it down in here, just put a little load on it, give it a tap, put some pressure on it, then you hit it on the side, and a lot of times it comes off. There, it came off. And that's all it is to get the flywheel off if you don't have a puller. If you have a puller, it's probably better to use the 4 bolts and a puller, but I just showed it this way. If you don't have a puller, it's one way to get them off. They just kind of work it off back and forth. And this flywheel here is actually bad because the magnets are loose on it. You gotta make sure those magnets are loose on it. These are all loose here. You have to either glue them back and clean them all up and glue them back in place. It's just for the charging system. And if you don't, you can find another used flywheel, but a lot of times you just epoxy them back in place and it works fine. Okay. Next step now, we got the coils off, we got the flywheel off, should have to do that. You got to take the key out of the keyway to get the crank out through the hole. So you just take the best way I do is just take a side cutters, grab that key and just pinch it and pull it right out. And then the next step after that, we're going to take these covers off and these covers off. 2 bolts on that breather cover, take this off. 10 millimeter. Take the bolt out and take their bolt out. And that will be, these two covers come right off. We'll put them off to the side. And then now we're gonna take these off. They're held on by a little 8 millimeter socket on their side here. Let me get the socket here. You take this little bolt out there. That one comes out. And then there's I'll take the 8 millimeter out their side. There's one on the front holding it too. It's the same process on both sides. There's the small one. And then now we're gonna spin around, take these bolts out on each side here. These bolts have a tendency to corrode in. Sometimes they corrode in, they'll twist off, so you gotta be careful. If it twists off, if it starts to not loosen up, you wanna put a little heat to it and work it back and forth and put a little WD-40 in it to get it to break loose. And that's that step right there. Okay, this next step is optional. You don't have to do it if your motor's pretty clean, you don't have to bother, but I'll show you how to do it. That way you know. If you want to take the stator off from this off, so you get it down to bare blocks, so you can clean your engine up better if it's really dirty, like this one's kind of dirty. You take a 10 millimeter socket, we're going to take these 4 bolts out, take this cover off, then we're going to take these bolts out here, take the stator off, and that will all come free then. Just simple, just take these bolts out. There's 3 pieces of this cover. You got this right piece, like this. We'll take this one off. Then you got the left piece, right here. Then this little connector piece in the middle. So you just gotta make sure you put it all back together. This goes against the block, then your two sit on top of it and put the bolt in. So that's all is to that. And then we're gonna take the stator off next here. Just take the 8 millimeter socket. This only helps by 2 bolts. Just keep track of your bolts so they can go back in. That way you can pull this off, you can clean that up, it's pretty dirty. And that now comes off with that intake and stuff. You can take and cut these zip strips and take the wiring loom apart, and you want to separate all that stuff, you can. If you're going to put it right back here like that, just leave it together like that. You can clean up just fine like that. We'll set it off to the side. And we'll go to the next step. Next step, we're getting right down to the brass tacks here. We're going to take the cylinder heads off. I'm going to show you how to do the one head. The arrowhead's just like this head, so just repeat the process. You're going to have bolts or studs, depending on how old your engine is. This one has studs. It takes a 13 millimeter socket and zip the 4 bolts off and just cap the head right off. These studs with they have a washer underneath them, so you don't want to lose the washers. Now we're just going to leave them on there. We can take these off the bottom. These are kind of hard to get up. We'll just leave them on there. And to get the head loose, just give it a slight pull. It comes right off. And there you go. The head is off. Leaking oil, but that's a common thing for these things. They got oil in them. We'll just kind of wipe off the excess. And then you want to take the gasket off too. And you'll have to probably replace the gasket because usually they're not reusable. Okay, next step, we got the cylinder heads off, everything is get down. Then we got left to do now is take the front cover off. We got to take the rosin and pop the pistons out, but right now we're going to take the front cover off. About 10 or 11 bolts around here. And take the 10 millimeter socket, just buzz the bolts out. I put a little mat underneath this thing because they do tend to leak a little oil because you can't get all the oil drained out of these. You always have a little bit left in there. I see this motor here's got orange silicone rubber on. That means this motor's been apart by somebody else somewhere along the line because from the factory they have black silicone rubber on them. So get that off. Then you just got to give it a little tap here, or a pry bar works pretty good. I get it right by the oil filter here against the cover. Heard it crackle from there a little bit, and then we got it down this corner. You do the same thing. Cover's loose. Now we just pull it out. The governor, the cam, and the cam should stay there, and just the front cover is just pulled off. There we have the front cover. It's off. You see where they had the orange silicone. Otherwise, the factory has black. Here's something. Whoever put this together didn't know what they're doing. I can see right now the dowel pins. This engine's supposed to have 2 dowel pins. One's right here, which is good. Did not put the front cover on right, because look at this one here. They did not have those dowel pins lined up. They just tightened the cover down. Hey, he's not going, let's just get the impact out and run her down, and smash the dowel pin. And that will cause serious alignment problems with the motor. I mean, that's just purely not paying attention to what you're doing, because that is not right. That's a regular, straight dowel pin. And if you do like that, you're going to have troubles. That's probably why it's here as a used motor. Probably didn't run right when they did it. And it also ruins the front cover too. See right there, there's a big metal shaving right in there now. Get a screwdriver, I'll show you. metal shaver in there where that cut that, and that metal shaving comes up, it comes off, it goes straight into the main bearing, it'll ruin your engine. So if you don't know what you're doing, have a professional do this. But I'm just trying to give you some pointers to how not to do it and how to do it. So, because that cover should go on and everything should line up perfect. And if you got to force it on that hard to crush that dowel pin, you're doing something wrong. Because that had to take a bolt. You had to drive it down with a bolt to do that. And that's just not the right way to do it. Next step, we're going to take the camshaft out right here. And there's a washer on this cam. Don't lose that washer. It's got to go right back in the engine with that. So just leave it on the cam. Just don't lose it. You got to pull the lifters out of the hole. I'm going to show you one side there, so I already got out. I take a little hook tool. Just hook on that lifter, you pull it up out of the hole. Keep these in order the way you take them out. Like this hole is like the front one. This one's the back one on that side, because you need to put them back on the cam in the same order they came out. So the lifters are out, as simple as that. Camshaft, just pull it right out. Cam is out. There's a time mark on this cam right here. We're going to have to line that up when we go back together. I'll show you that's done on the reassembly part. Okay, next step, we got to take the connecting rods loose. That's these 4 bolts right here. They vary in size depending on the model motor you got. This particular one takes 10mm socket. And what you're going to do, we're going to take the bolts out and take the rod caps off, and then we'll pop the pistons out. And we're going to discard this, or you can sell them on eBay. What you want to do is use rods. But the stroker kit gets new rods with it. So, and just take these 4 bolts out. They're kind of long. I use an air ratchet, 1/4-inch air ratchet, works really good. Put it on there, then you can just take and just break the bolt loose, then run it down with the air ratchet. Okay, I got the rod caps off. You're going to discard this stuff. Next thing, we're going to take the piston out of the hole. You need to put the pistons back in it. If you have a few hours, only a few hours in an engine, you can probably just take your pistons out of the hole, put the new rods on, and drop right back in the hole without honing it. If you got quite a few hours in your motor, you know, I'd say anything more than 50 hours, you'll probably want to, when you pull apart, put new rings in the pistons, and then hone the cylinders and put it back together. But just rotate the crank around. I already took the one out already. Rotate around, and then you can just take in, you know, like a rubber handled pry bar works good. Get between there, then you can pop that piston up out of the hole. Once you get past the rings, you know, it's just about ready to come out. And there you go, the piston's out of the hole. And the next thing we got to do after that, let's continue on here. We got to take the wrist pins out. There's a little slot right here. Just get in there with a pick and get right there and pop that ring right out of there. It's kind of tricky. You have to play it a little bit, but don't let it go flying across the shop because you need to reuse that. And there's your piston pin clip. Then after that, you can push the piston pin out of here. Just slide it through there. Sometimes there's a little buildup. You might have to do a little tapping on it to get it out of there. And then once you get past the rod, you can pull the rod up out of the hole. Usually it just takes a little bit of a finesse to get it out. But once you get the pin out, you pull the rod out, put the new pin on, and go back there. And the last step then is just got to pull the crank out of the hole. And that's the old cranker. You can sell this, or what you want to do, you get rid of it. And next step, next time we come back, we'll have the block. I'll show you how to after it's cleaned out, we'll show you how to deburr it or clearance it for the rods, and then start going back together. Okay, we got the block all cleaned up. We already did this ahead of time, so I'm going to show you what you got to do. You got to clearance the bottom of the cylinders for the rod to clear on the opposite side. So as this back rod comes around, it'll hit the bore right here. So just take a cutoff wheel, just go about 1/4 inch and 1/4 inch over, and just clearance that there. And then this side here, same thing right there. You want to clearance right through there. And you'll see when you kind of dummy assemble it, you can see that the rods will hit there, otherwise just to clear, because the rod wheel will catch it in the edge of the rod wheel. So that's all you got to do for that step. Next step we're going to do, we're going to put the crank in, and then we'll put the rod and piston in. Okay, next step we're going to put the crankshaft into the motor. I always use a little white assembly lube on it to give it some pre-lube while you put it here. It's a little white assembly lube in there. Smear it around a little bit. Then we're going to stick the crank in the hole. All the way in. Okay, the crank is in the engine. Next step is we're going to put the rods and pistons on. And I already got that rod off there one earlier. So we're going to stick this one back in here. I just kept track of that thing there. Stick the pin in there and you put the clips back in. Usually use a couple fingers. You can force it past there. You good strong thumbs. Once you get started, you can take and pop it out and across the floor. It's kind of hard to do. You kind of got to hold it down steady so it won't rock. Okay, I got her in. Clips back in. Now we'll just put a little bit of assembly lube on here. Smear a little bit on the bearing. Put these in here. The chamfered edge always goes toward, like this piston here goes on this side because it goes toward the front because this chamfered edge here. You put the other one on, it'll be just the other way around. The chamfered edge goes toward the back. So like this, if you have a lot of hours on your engine, you might want to hone it, put your rings on. For the purpose of this video, we're just going to show you putting the whole piston back in the hole. Sit that down in the hole like that. It goes on there. This one's marked flywheel side. I got to get the, well, just 1 second. We'll go and get the ring compressor. I'll show you how to put that in. Okay, I got the ring compressor. We used an expandable, just regular clamp type ring compressor. I think I got this one at, I bought this from Snap-on or someplace, or Matco Tools. You want to put a little bit of oil on the rings and the piston when you assemble that. A little bit on the center wall too. On this particular, just to show you, I won't do it, but you need to put a little bit of oil on that. Roll the crank around the top dead center on that cylinder, so the rod will hit that thing. Then just take a rubber hammer and just kind of tap it in. It's in. Push it down. I kind of rotate it to the bottom. Then I'll take the rod cap, put a little bit of oil on the rod, or a little bit of grease on the rod cap. Give it some grease to start up with. If you put more on than that, that's not a problem. I kind of start the bolts in because they fit pretty tight, those holes. So I kind of start them like that so they're right close to where they need to be. I kind of get them close so they screwed up here to about the top. Then we just put that on the rod cap like that. Screw up in there until they start. Once you get them started, you can, I use like a little air ratchet to get them started up here to roll them up. Let me just start. I just throw them down here with the air ratchet tight, then we then you kind of see how it goes up and down. It's all ready to roll. What you want to do is you want to, here's where that rod will hit right there. In the corner here, you want to make sure it clears. See that just clears just past it. That's where it wants to hit. It clears everything else, everywhere else around it. So that's the only place you got a clearance. It's just the bottom of the cylinder. That's why you want to grind it this side for that rod. Get a torque wrench, torque these down to 20 foot-pounds. And that's on our catalog. Hold on a second here. And on page 36 on our catalog, all the torque specs for this engine is on in that catalog page. And for reassembly purposes too, you can download the free manual on the Kohler web page. It's kohlerengines.com, I believe. And it gives you all the specs for that. And right here it says MWC rods torqued to 20 foot-pounds. So you torque them rods down, and there we go. Then once you get that part done, you got to put the cam in. If you get both pistons in, put the cam in. Right here, the bottom tooth, see right there, there's the timing mark right there. We engrave it a little bit on the time mark where it is. And that's where you got to line the camshaft up. So you might want to put a little bit of grease on that camshaft back there before you stick it in the hole. There's the time mark there, so it's going to go right there between those two teeth. Right there, that tooth is going to go right next to it. So you just got to find the hole right here. Rotate it around here. tooth is right here. When this one is, this should be marked here and here, but it's this tooth here. It's always opposite the keyway. That tooth there is always the time mark on the engine. So you might want to check too, if you ever have a stock motor and it's not running right. Sometimes these gears slip on the crank on a stock one, that the gears start slipping around, the engine falls out of time, but it's always opposite the keyway. Opposite keyway is the timing mark right there, so you always want to line up. That's how those stock engines are done. And once you get that put on, we're going to put the front cover on. I'll show you how to put the dowel pins and the front cover on next. Ready? Next step is we're going to put the front cover on. Maybe put a little, good idea, put a little grease in this thing here, the bearing surface, same way on the crank right there. So when you start up, it won't be a dry start. Yeah, it's not a bad idea once you put the gear and get the oil in it, is to crank it over and until you get oil pressure and everything, and then start it up, you know. For the purpose of this demonstration, I'm not going to put any silicone rubber on here. You'll need to put silicone rubber on here to seal this up. I use the Ultra Black from Permatex. It works pretty good. And just put a light coat all around there. Be careful around, don't get any oil inside that, or silicone inside that, because that will go to the oil pressure, because that's the oil feed hole that feeds the crank and stuff. And you can kind of see here on your cover, you got the rubber O-ring there too, so just make sure you don't get any silicone down in that hole. Just kind of go around it. And it don't take a lot to seal it up. And what you want to do is put this thing on here. We're just going to get it lined up. And as you get up close to it, you're going to need to turn it over. You're going to need to turn over while you try to get the oil pump gear engaged with it. Just kind of rotate the gear, and kind of feel it gauges up. Then you kind of work this back and forth. And it works pretty good. Just take a dead blow hammer and tap this together, or you can use the rubber end of the handle. Just make sure those dowel pins are started right. You see it's right tight up against it right now. Then you just install these bolts, the cover bolts. You got one bolt here on these cover bolts. One bolt's zinc plated. The other ones are not. The zinc plated bolts go on the through holes. This one up here, because what happens, it gets corrosion on the back side, that bolt will twist off and take the threads out. So you put all the bolts in here, and again, we'll refer to our catalog on page 36. Shouldn't close the page up. It shows the torquing sequence for that right there. 1, 2, 3. Torque them to 18 foot-pounds, equally all around there. And it should turn over when you're done. The inches should turn over, and it should have a little bit. It should have backlash in the crankshaft. The spec on Kohler is 3,000, up to like 30,000. So if it seems kind of loose, it really won't hurt it. They like to be looser than they are tighter. So that's not a really big important thing. Just so it has adequate in play. It's got excessive, it ain't going to hurt anything. So once you torque them all down, then you're ready to put the lifters back in the holes and the cylinder heads on. Next step, we're going to put the lifters in the holes. I kept these in order from when we took them out the same direction. Just put a little bit of, I put a little bit of grease in each bottom of each lifter. Drop them down in the holes. Push them up against the camshaft. And then now we're ready to put the head on. The cylinder head, these are marked, so you'll make sure it's right. There's a number on these blocks. There's number 2, there's number 1. Heads are marked accordingly. Number 2 head goes to number 2 side. You want to put a new gasket on that thing, and then you need to put some your alignment studs back in. The alignment studs go here. Put them in the block, put your head gasket on, and bolt the head on. In just a second, I'll get some alignment studs. We'll put them in, and I'll show you how to bolt the head on and do that part of it. Next step is we're going to put the dowel pins in the block for the cylinder head. Just take and put them in there. Sometimes you got to tap them in with a hammer, sometimes not. Take the head gasket, set the head gasket over top that. The oil hole should line up. Take your number 2 head, your number 2 cylinder, and just set that baby right on there. Then we'll put get the washers out for the head bolts. The 4 washers. So this one's got this has bolts in it. So let me get the studs, because I took the studs out. This is a different block that we took apart. So for the purpose of the movie, the film. So I'll get some bolts we'll put in here, and I'll show you how to torque them down. Got the head bolts. What you should do, if you don't have anti-seize, meaning if you have bolts, not studs, put some anti-seize on these threads. If you don't have anti-seize, put a little bit of oil on the threads like that. So otherwise, it'll gold that aluminum after a while. So make sure you oil all the bolts. And before you run them down, you put the 4 bolts in there. I always just take the impact, we'll run them down snug. Always tighten it down on an X pattern. These bolts here, you refer to them in the catalog too. The head bolts are torqued to 30 foot-pounds, and they kind of show you how to torque it 1, 2, 3, 4. And then once you get the heads torqued down both sides, next step we're going to put the push rods in. Just drop the push rods down there on top of the cam, on top of the lifters. Make sure you're getting the center of the hole, not off the sides. Then from there we're going to put the rockers on the same way they came off, and just put them on there like that. This other one here. Then we're going to run these things down. We're slightly tighten them. These don't get torqued very tight, so it don't take much to get them tight. And we'll torque these things down. Just a second, I'll get a socket and that, and I'll be right back. Okay, I need the socket. The other thing too, before you put these rockers on, take a little bit of grease, stick in that ball there, and put some grease down in each side of that thing where that thing wears, because it takes a little while for the oil to get up there. Then bolt it together. That way you got grease up on there good. There should be enough oil on there if you forget, but it's better to do that. So then we just run these things down. When you run these things down, they get torqued down after you get them run down here. And these are hydraulic lifters too, so if you push the valve open, that's normal because it's going to push that plunger back down and sink it back in. Make sure it's all lined up pretty square then. Take an inch-pound torque wrench, and you look on our catalog again, these are torqued to 100 inch-pounds. Torque them down 100 inch-pounds, and then from there we're ready to put the valve cover on. And the valve cover, you just need to, this is when the O-ring came out of it. We're going to slap that O-ring right back in the hole again like that. And once you get the O-ring in place, you put the O-ring, put the valve cover on. Then we put those spacers in here that line it up. Then you put your bolts in there, hold it on. And just go around and do all them, and they're torqued the same way, 100 inch-pounds and all those. And then from there, you'll start putting your, just reverse the order of it, putting the intake and the carburetor, and the intake and the carburetor on, and the linkage back on, just reverse the way you took it apart. And like I said, you can refer to the service manual you got downloaded free from the internet, from the Kohler web page. And it's pretty straightforward after that. When you get it all put back together, put some oil in the motor, and crank it over to, and the oil, and everything too on the oil filter. When you put the oil filter on, make sure you fill that filter full of oil first, and let it set for a little bit, a couple 3 minutes, and make sure it's perfectly full. Then just put it on the motor, and then crank it over till you get pressure up to the top, on the top of that breather covers where the pressure comes in last at the top there. And once you get some oil pressure, then you can go ahead and start it up. And it should be ready to run. Just do your, if you got new rings in, you got to do the normal break-in for the rings, you know, and then you'll change your oil and service like you always do. And that's all we should have to do to get this. If you have any more questions, feel free to email us or call us. But this kit here will take your engine from like your 27 horsepower mud boat motor. That's a 44 cubic inch engine. It'll take it to 50.5 cubic inch. By putting this crank in it, you'll pick up about 10 horse and 10 foot-pounds of torque. So it'll make that, you'll go from, 27 horse to probably around 40 horse, upper 30s for sure. And torque, you'll go from the 40-some foot-pounds of torque to 55 foot-pounds of torque probably. So it should really make it a big difference on a mud boat or any other applications. You need a little bit more torque, a little more horsepower. This is the kit for it.